All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code podcast5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends. After starting her career as a litigator, Robin Arzón made a major pivot and became the VP of Fitness Programming and the head instructor at Peloton. She is also an ultra marathoner, the best-selling author of Shut Up and Run, and a very proud mama to her daughter, Athena. She's recently released her first children's book, Strong Mama. Robin wrote this book while pregnant with her daughter as a love letter to her, the ultimate training partner. During pregnancy, movement became more important than ever to Robin, to stay as healthy as she could, but also to maintain a sense of self and remind herself of her strength. She wants this book to encourage everyone to discover the magic of endorphins and uncover the power each one of us has inside. Let's welcome Robin to the show. Robin, thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited about your new book, Strong Mama. I've read it to Sebastian, and it's just so empowering for women who not only have big careers, but who also want to be active throughout their pregnancy and for their mental health. So thank you for putting this out into the world. It's so awesome.
Oh, thanks for having me. Excited to talk about it.
Yeah. So can we let's go back. Your journey has taken you from a career as a litigator to a best-selling author and the VP of Fitness Programming at Peloton. How did that transition happen?
It happened slowly. I was a lawyer for almost 8 years, and it was during that period, actually during law school, when I really started falling in love with running and signing up for marathons and ultra marathons. And yeah, I definitely ran myself out of a law career, but I was a corporate litigator in New York City for the time that I practiced law. And it was in that experience that I really started to understand that we own the pen to the story that we're writing. And when I became pregnant, I thought, okay, I need to encapsulate some of these meta messages in something that's age appropriate. So that was kind of the inspiration behind Strong Mama, is to send the message to little ones that self-care isn't selfish and movement is medicine. And I didn't discover that until I was an adult, and I didn't want my baby to have to wait that long.
No, it's such a gift when we're active from a young age. Can you talk about how you fell in love with fitness? I know it sounds like you were probably in a big time law career and you started running. Who got you excited about running? How did you fall in love with it?
Well, when I moved to New York, I was practicing, a pretty high pressure, 80-hour a week corporate law firm gig. And I started signing up for races. My first marathon was the New York City Marathon, and I ran with a crew called the New York City Bridge Runners, and they really got me excited about the ability to see New York on foot and lace up and be unapologetic about, painting the city in sweat. And that was like a really exciting part of my life. And I realized that I was leading a divorced existence because I would count down the hours until I could run. And I thought to myself, well, I can't be only living for 20 minutes a day. It would be at best some days I'd maybe get 20 minutes of movement in. And that having that community around me really, really helped me make some tough choices when I ultimately decided to leave my law firm.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, leaving, it's funny that we call it a recovering attorney at my house, because my husband was an attorney for about 8 years before he left to write. And I think going to school, having this identity and being we'll say like an overachiever or like a high achieving human, to go and go to school and then go to law school and then start practicing in a big corporate environment and all of the accolades that come with that and the kudos, and to decide to move in to fitness. Like, what did that transition look like and feel like for you? And how did running give you the confidence to do it?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, running was huge. I believe that confidence is a side effect of hustle. So when I developed slowly, iteratively, the confidence to leave my firm, it really was in direct correlation to how I felt like I was creating this new life for myself as an athlete, and really for the first time ever. The process was slow. So I had a 10-minute a day rule, which I actually later applied to movement during pregnancy. But my 10-minute a day rule really was that you're going to take at least 10 minutes, and that is where you're going to do the Google search, send the email, do one thing that moves the needle closer to your dream. And how I applied it during pregnancy was just 10 minutes of movement. Like, you can hit the eject button and stop any workout after 10 minutes, especially on the days that you're super fatigued and not feeling great. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I would end up doing my entire workout and feeling great afterwards, after the endorphins started kicking in. And the 10-minute a day rule has always been a nice lesson that little by little amounts to a lot. The dreams can feel really daunting, and that fear can be paralyzing. But if you make one small step, you make one small choice. And that was really how I left law. It was a 2-year process with a lot of 10 minutes every day cobbled together. And, ultimately I ended up leaving just 2 weeks before the London Olympics, and I ended up reporting for the games from my blog and writing for publications. And then I started writing my first book, Shut Up and Run. So that was, that was the genesis of it.
Wow. It's just amazing, but a testament too, because I think a lot of people have this pressure, like, I really don't like what I'm doing, or I'm identifying and feeling really connected to this other like power source. And in your life, it was running. But to feel overwhelmed by the process of unraveling their life and building anew, I think we all feel like it's too late, or we've worked too hard for something. What advice do you have for people? I mean, I love the 10-minute a day rule. What advice do you have for people trying to transition? And do you feel like there were specific 10 minutes that really moved the needle further than others for you? Like those kind of like big breakthrough moments in your little 10 minutes a day steps?
Yeah, I don't think that there was a singular moment. I actually think it's important to normalize the fact that those important life changes are often much more subtle. And it's crucial that we set up processes and systems and opportunities for us to actually listen to ourselves, because it's unlikely to be this massive moment where you have that kind of metaphorical slap in the face. Right. Most of the time you've had little whispers, and we have the opportunity to turn those whispers into roars, but we have to listen. And for me, it was obviously, lacing up and being on the runs, but my friend Eve wrote a book called Finding Your Unicorn Space, and she calls it her unicorn space, right? It's like, but we all have the opportunities to carve out these little moments for ourselves where we can actually listen in. And then what bridges those little whispers into more demonstrative action is, sending the email, scheduling the calendar appointment, scheduling the workout, creating boundaries around your time, your energy. That's when we get to like the goal setting stuff. And, there's obviously lots of research around those principles, but it wasn't one singular moment. The tip I would give to folks is Well, I did a 3-part audit, like specifically to career change. I think it's important, there's some practical elements that we have to consider. So I did a financial audit. It's like, how was I going to afford to not be making my law firm salary anymore? I didn't know I was going to be freelancing completely, and I didn't really know how much a runway I had to do that. So I really had to do, crunch numbers and figure out the dollars and cents of it all. So that was the financial piece of the 3-part audit. The second piece was a more spiritual audit. And, that's where I allowed myself to ask those big questions of existential questions of why am I here? What am I doing? where do I even find joy? So focus on the moments when you're feeling those glimmers of joy and how can you construct a life where you start to center that joy? That shouldn't be something that we do only on a Saturday afternoon on the weekends. We should be able to maximize joy in our lives intentionally. And then the third part of the 3-part audit was a physical audit. It was how am I, we can't prepare for these life changes on an empty tank. So now self-care is very buzzy, but what if we, at the root of it, it's like, are you drinking water? Did you sleep at all? Have you eaten a vegetable? How are you feeling in your physical body? Because even if the goal is not physically oriented, we really do need to be, strong in our skin in order to make brave choices. So that was the 3-part audit that I did personally when I was transitioning from law to wellness. And, I still kind of do variations of that audit often.
The physical stamina you have is absolutely correlated to your mental stamina. If you aren't physically taking care of yourself, you won't have the mental stamina to manage entrepreneurship and a career change and these big questions you may be asking yourself. I love that you mentioned this 3-step approach. The financial audit hits home for me because I remember when I was leaving cancer genetics and moving into nutrition, my own practice in LA, we sold a car to guarantee, my husband and I went down to one car to guarantee that we were I had a 4-month runway on rent just to not feel the pressure of that, that financial change and letting go of a big corporate salary. So sometimes it's what do we really need, right? Oh, so good. Well, you mentioned so many things before you went into your 3-part approach. Setting bound, not only do you have to understand what it is that you want to do or kind of have these inklings of this passion to change, but then you need to have boundaries and set goals. And you've done that beautifully. You've built an amazing career as the VP of fitness programming at Peloton, and you wrote your new book, Strong Mama. So I'd love to know how you set the boundaries and set the goals to write this book. I know it was inspired by your daughter. Can you talk about the idea of the book and its impetus and what brought it to life?
Yeah, well, I was training throughout my pregnancy. I taught very publicly at Peloton on the bike, on the tread, and in our strength classes. And I created a prenatal program with Peloton. And I really wanted to memorialize this idea that the baby was my training partner. We were in those workouts together. It was healthy for me. It was healthy for baby. And not only should, fit pregnancies be normalized, I also wanted to amplify this really beautiful relationship that I had with my little workout partner, and whether it was feeling the baby react to music or, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm on a run and there are 2 heartbeats in my body right now. There were very special moments that I wanted to memorialize. And more than that, there were 2 important meta concepts that I infused into the book, that movement is medicine and that self-care is a sacred practice. It's not selfish. And I envisioned myself reading the book to baby at some point and explaining these concepts, that when mommy goes for a run, I'm taking care of myself so I can take better care of you. And then, so children have an ability to kind of figure out their own relationships with movement and play and concepts of self-care, even from a young age, especially at a young age, to give them, the tools for that kind of agency. There's, it's beautifully illustrated by Adi Rivera Sonda. I am a proud Latina, and I wanted to infuse that energy into the book, including some Spanish language. And the entire process of writing that book was really a love letter to my daughter. It's a story that's, of course, very personal to me, but I think what's drawn out of the book is this larger global experience that, caregivers and birthing folk are so incredibly strong, and we shouldn't be shying away from that. We should be leaning into it and really partnering with our little ones, on that journey for strength.
Absolutely. You do a really amazing job of sort of unraveling a culture of parenting. And I'm curious if it was your experience where my mom put everything into me when I was born and my sisters followed shortly after. Like, there was no self-care time for my mom. She was up early, making our meals, like driving us all over, like supporting our growth and development, and then sending us off to school or whatever the case may be. And there wasn't that carve out time for her. There wasn't that self-care is sacred. And I feel like it's only natural that if we don't put our oxygen mask on first or give ourselves that sacred self-care, that there's a little bit of resentment, or there isn't strength and ownership of self that can happen when you have self-care. So I really appreciate the messages throughout this book, because it is a culture. It's just a history that's a part of like a lot of mothers' lives. What was your personal experience when it came to how your mom practiced self-care?
Yeah, that's a great question. In many ways, she did model some of these concepts. She was not an athlete, but she's been a physician for my entire childhood. She actually had me when she was in her residency of after medical school. And seeing her practice medicine and continue to choose, a path that made it sometimes really inconvenient when she had to make a choice, and the things that she did, the sacrifices she made, I only now really understand, of course, as a mother myself. The reality is, though, it was very healthy for me to see her make those choices and say, the world needs me in this different capacity, and it's not always going to be my primary identity as your mom. And now I can look back on that story and understand it and respect it. And I'm making similar choices as an entrepreneur and as an executive, and I'm a lot of things. I'm a lot of things in addition to being a mother, and I'm going to continue to be. And, that's a story that, Athena and my family and I are going to continue to write together. What I will say in terms of the movement piece is my mom wasn't an athlete until now. She works out all the time, and it's really not a concept that was introduced to me growing up. I was the arts and crafts kid. I was the straight A student. I was petrified of gym class. And so I'm excited now that, Athena has a lot of examples, including her abuela, her grandmother, my mom, myself, and a lot of folks in our ecosystem. She has a lot of amazing, particularly female energy in her life. And it's cool that she's going to have examples and lots of tools. So she'll have the tool of movement. She'll have the tool of music. She'll have the tool of course, traditional education. And that's very exciting to me, is that she gets to choose the path and kind of what lives in her superhero toolkit.
Well, you are absolutely a strong mama and a great example. And we know like exposure is everything for kids. Like, they just need exposure to things so that they can experience it and make those choices for themselves. And you're giving her that. I'm curious, like, do you have times where you struggle to feel like a strong mom, and how do you show up and kind of right your ship when you are struggling?
Postpartum was definitely, I've read so much about postpartum, but you don't know it until you're in it. And I know that every birthing experience can be different. And that period was very vulnerable. Slowing down was really hard for me. And that was discovering that slowing down is also a strength was really profound. And now it's nice to know that I can slow down and not feel like I need to explain why. And that's a lesson that I've learned since being a mom. And, my life is centered around physical practices and strength. And most of the time I do feel pretty strong, and I'm very much in alignment with my power. But there are days where I feel fragmented, and I think a lot of caregivers feel like almost splintered to the point of like, I just want to clone myself. Mm-hmm. And that's when I feel not necessarily physically weak, but like energetically split. And in those moments is when I have to zoom out and ask myself, like, How can you exercise the power of no right now to protect your yeses? And what part of this story will or won't make sense in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? And it's kind of, that helps me like not sweat the small stuff as much and prioritize the big stuff. That's a filter that I've been trying to, I will constantly, I'm sure I have a lifetime of adapting that filter, but that's definitely in this first year of motherhood, something that I've been trying to work on.
Oh, it's like the first thing you learn as a mom. You're like, yes, I would like to clone myself. I'd like one person to do all of my hustle, like my job, and then the other person to be physically present, mentally present and calm with my child, and just play and experience and like see the world through their eyes. It's super powerful. But like you said, boundaries, filters, prioritizing your yeses and setting boundaries around your no's. What are some things that were yeses before having your daughter, and what are you bucketing as no's now?
So, stuff that might have been business opportunities that I was just so on. It's like, oh, I'll just try it. Like there's no, I'll just try it anymore. Either it's a hell yes, and I'm excited and I'm partnering and I'm giving you my energy, like fully. There's no lukewarm yeses in my life. And that applies to social engagements. It applies to my business opportunities. It applies to opportunities that have come along my way, at Peloton. And it's just, I'm not anybody's guinea pig anymore. I have a very clear, crystallized kind of who I am, the values that matter to me, and who I am as a brand in the public sphere, and confident in those choices. So the no's are the things that I've stepped into as no's would have been previously lukewarm yeses. And that's even to stuff that pulls at my heartstrings, requests for charity appearances, stuff that it's like, oh, they'll just take an hour, oh yeah, sure, I'll just do this social thing for an hour. It's like, nah, if it doesn't light me up, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Yeah. Well, hell yes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your passion, because, I do have a Peloton. I have taken your classes. Like, I know your energy and I feel it, and it comes through in your new book. And it's just, you're setting the example for moms out there, especially working moms out there who have different facets of their life, who, might not always, their number one thing might not be to just be a mom, but to like also have pieces of them and to protect those pieces and to have boundaries and to like learn from the times when you say yes to something that isn't a hell yes, and then go like, oh, gotta learn from that. Like, how do I keep learning? And I think that's been so interesting for me. I mean, just even in like the short 3.5 years that I've had kids, it's just like, wow, it can hit you in the face. So, but I think also like working moms, when you do have those priorities of your children and your family, like you can be so much more efficient. And when it is a hell yes, you almost like double what you produce sometimes, which is pretty fascinating to be a part of and see how amazing these strong mamas are. But
I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to your pregnancy. I'd love to know like how your personal experience with pregnancy was and like what surprised you. I mean, it didn't surprise me that you were riding a bike pregnant or running pregnant, but but what was your personal experience, and what were you surprised by?
I was honestly surprised by how much I was able to continue to do. I had no idea how my body was going to respond, how I was going to feel. Thankfully, I had an uncomplicated pregnancy, and I was able to do pretty much everything that I love doing. I was so scared that I would be completely sidelined and that I would just have to be, there's such a surrender to there's a surrender to pregnancy and motherhood, but I didn't have to surrender all the things that make me me. And I think that was really amazing to experience. And I think, there's the specific stuff, right? Like the fatigue in the first trimester was just crushing. Like it brought me back to literally training for ultra marathons when I was running like 200 miles in a week.
Wow.
Like it would be 3 p.m. And we've all experienced it. It's like you'd be 3 p.m. You're like, is this 4 a.m. at a nightclub? Like, I don't understand how I'm so tired right now. So yeah, there were little moments like that took me by surprise. But I will say the surprise really was characterized as delight in the fact that I was still lifting weights. I was, I could safely continue to do things that I was doing pre-pregnancy, as generally speaking, we all can. And I continued to do it. And I found a lot of support, with other, female athletes and pregnant folk that were like, hell yeah, like continue doing that. That makes you you. And a happy endorphin filled pregnancy, I think, contributes to some good energy, good vibes for baby.
Yeah. Actually there's some pretty interesting research that I share in my pregnancy nutrition course about movement, because I think there's this belief, or, there were some guidelines from the Gynecologic Association that said like, you shouldn't get your heart rate above a certain beat and things like that. And the science
so just antiquated
crushes it. It crushes it. And it talks all about how children of pregnant moms who move more actually move more as babies and move faster in their milestones. And, I think we're just at the tipping point of really understanding the research when it comes to like any of the biochemical benefits that we get as humans, that we know we get, myokines, like anti-inflammatory chemicals, like are those passing through our umbilical cord blood to baby if they're present in our blood? Like, I mean, they're not testing pregnant women at this point, but there are so many amazing byproducts of moving your body that it would surprise me that baby isn't just like floating in all that goodness. So you've openly taken your maternity leave, which I love, setting boundaries again, showing us how to do it.
Yes.
Why has this been important to you? And what are you hoping to teach other moms?
I took every ounce, every drop of my maternity leave. It was important for me to model that to other Peloton instructors. I'm the first instructor to have taken maternity leave on the team, not the first mom, but the first person pregnant on the job and taking maternity leave thereafter. And we have different chapters in our lives, right? And we can choose at any given point what we want our primary focus and identity to be. And we have to challenge the systems to change for us. We shouldn't change what our next chapter should be based on the system. Mm-hmm. And so I thought to myself, my job is incredibly physical. It was a deeply personal and physical. I have a very physical job, and obviously pregnancy is deeply personal and physical. And I had to choose, and I chose my family and I chose my birth experience. And it was really liberating to just say, it can all wait. You can all wait. Mm-hmm. And I'll be back on my terms. And of course, Peloton was a great partner in that journey. And when I came back, of course, there's a transition period where you feel like, gosh, do I still know how to do this? Like you're catching up on the emails and the phone calls and anybody re-entering the workplace. You have that little bit of friction when mostly in your head, right? That you think like that little bit of FOMO. Mm-hmm. And then you get back in the groove and you realize, I'm a better person for having created that boundary. And we should absolutely, be supporting parents of all kinds. My husband took parental leave. He works in a very traditional finance, real estate construct, and he took parental leave. And he was one of the first, for a lot of his teammates, they were like, oh, wow, is this a thing? And he was like, absolutely, this is a thing. And you should make it a thing too. So let's start to normalize.
I feel when someone is as strong as you and you're normalizing that, you're normalizing it for people who don't have their voice. And that is like a huge responsibility. But it makes major changes for the people behind you. So kudos to you for doing that. The transition into motherhood and then back to the workplace can be, like you said, there can be some friction. How and what are some of like your daily tools or habits that have supported you to feel like you're back in the flow?
Owning my no to protect my yes was important. Also letting folks in my world, both my work world and my personal world, know how they can support me. So whether it was, asking specifically things from my husband to kind of set me up. So it's like, I only have 15 minutes. I'm going to breastfeed before this call. I literally have 2 seconds to eat. I need you to make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at 2:45. And it was like, that was how specific we got it. And we kind of tag teamed just to make it work. And I have an amazing team, and I have an amazing executive assistant, and she was really helpful and supportive in transitioning, and I recognize how privileged I am to have that support. But it's also important that we let those people in our lives know, like, this is X, Y, and Z is a priority. Like, I don't take calls. It's actually an exception because I have a call this evening, but I normally don't take calls after 5:00, and that is a line in the sand, and that's protected time with my family. And so when you define what the finish line and what success looks like for yourself and for your team, you can then use a work back approach and then say, okay, then how are we going to get the work done? How do we do it in a way that protects my boundaries, but still gets us to that literal or figurative finish line? And that is, really involves having healthy conversations with our teammates and the stakeholders in our lives.
Absolutely. So when you kind of take that, when you zoom back and look at your life, your husband, your daughter, your career at Peloton, now being an author, when you define success and then work backwards, like, what does success look like for you? Because as a go-getter, an overachiever, an ultra marathon, how are you maybe slowing yourself down, or saying, like, when is enough, and what does success really look like for you?
This old adage of staying in your lane never sat right with me. Mm-hmm. And I think I define success as widening the aperture of that lane. Like, I will step into the vastness of who I am and what I'm capable of doing. And I truly believe that I want to live a life that redefines possibility and then lights fires in other people's lives, including, of course, my daughter's. And I want her to step into the vastness of who she is. The larger question of, like, when I'm 90-something years old, hopefully, looking back at a life like deeply, deeply, deeply felt and intentionally lived, I want to look back and be like, hell yeah, I did that. And there are going to be thousands of chapters. I mean, thousands. And I find that so exciting and intoxicating. And I want to create platforms and opportunities for people to realize that they've made it through 100% of their stuff, and they're still here, and they're still owning the pen to their story. So I guess long answer to your question is, I define success as owning the pen to my story and continuing to write something that is going to make me feel like a badass when I'm 90.
Yeah. And to make it through, like, you're having fun along the way too. You are definitely penning your story in a positive way, and you're lighting other people up, which is just so, if anyone is on Peloton, they already know that, but you're also a huge advocate for mental health. Can you talk about why it's so important to you and what you do to support your own mental health?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm so grateful that we're living in a time now where these conversations are becoming more common. The mind, body connection is, of course, age old, but now we have more direct entry points, whether it's, meditation, which is a practice that I use every day, or whether it's movement, which is so incredibly healing. It certainly has been for me, running through trauma in my life. I believe in creating a superhero toolkit and because my mom taught me that superheroes are real, and that is something that I'm now teaching my daughter. And in that toolkit, we can amass different things, whether it's talk therapy, whether it's dance, whether it's movement, whether it's cooking, whether, just these little ways or big ways where we can carve out that space to listen to our inner dialogue. For me, it was certainly on the run and pursuing marathons and ultra marathons that I spent a lot of time out on the road listening to the conversation I was having in between my ears. And whether it's something like creating a vision board, journaling, These are all ways in which we can tap in order to kind of start to metabolize some of that stuff, some of that stress, some of that stuff that can be very caustic and damaging. So the more opportunities we can add, the more we offer folks the opportunity to add to that superhero toolkit so they can pick in any given day, any given moment, whether it's breath work. I mean, my gosh, it's so vast what can be in that toolkit. But I'm glad that we're actually having these conversations so folks can get curious about what it is they need so they can be better versions of themselves, and not necessarily even to optimize the hustler's mentality, which I do love and I do ascribe to, but it's much more simple and based than that. It's like, how can we show up in our minds and our bodies in a way that allows us to protect our peace and elevate our spirit?
Yeah, there are definitely so many more entry points than ever before. The conversation around trauma, whether it's holistic psychologists online and, people showing up in social media and giving us the tools to understand, like, what are these relationships? What does trauma look like? It's important to kind of like open Pandora's box and know what's there. But what I love about you and your messaging is that there is so much strength in each of us. And it reminded me, because I was actually looking at a study earlier today, that, we all go through bits of trauma, but what happens more often on the back end of trauma, not like broken pain, but it's called post-traumatic growth. And we actually grow more than we are broken. And your message is clear in that. And whether that's that superhero toolkit or your new book, Strong Mama, I just have to give you kudos for really giving people an outlet to move through, like physically, like actually move their body through whatever it is that they're working through, especially if that trauma is living inside their body.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks for that acknowledgement. It's crucial work. And it's something that it has been my lived experience. When I laced up for the first time in law school, it wasn't just to run through the stresses of law school. It was, trauma that I had experienced the year prior when I was in my senior year at NYU. And I know that for the big stuff and the little stuff, movement allows us to really heal.
So awesome that you're doing all that you do at Peloton and in your work outside of it. How do you inspire your husband and your daughter to move their body every day?
Well, thankfully, with Athena, it's pretty innate. I think kids are natural athletes. She's basically doing parkour around our house all day. She's got it going on. And my husband, it's so foundational to our household. When my husband and I, first got together, we identified and found dates and excitement around athletics. And some of our favorite dates now are, my mom watching the baby and us having our workouts together. So that is foundational. And of course, there are lots of days where we're not able to work out together, when he's, I'm taking, watching Athena, and then we're trading time. And it's really important that each of us has those opportunities to work out, because we're better for each other and for our families when we do.
Yeah, there's nothing like hanging out and having floor time with a baby after you've run around. I feel like there's a different, you come at it as a mom, you come at it in such a different, like the fuse you have is 100 feet longer. The like excitement and presence you have just after I think it's like getting the jitters out. Like, you just got to move your body so that you can ground yourself on the floor with your babies. Like I hear that loud and clear. And it's a juggle, right? I mean, there was a time when Chris and I used to each have like these killer morning routines, and now we have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And when you have one and you kind of like tag team, it's always important to like really continue to do that as you grow your family too, because what used to be like each of our morning routines turned into like, I have Monday, Wednesday, Friday locked and loaded. He has Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday locked and loaded. Like, he gets the first session of the morning routine. So like his is protected those days and mine is protected the other days, just because if you don't do that, like all of your personal time gets eaten up from both of you. And then there's resentment about like not protecting your personal time and having a moment to remember that you're an individual on your own first, which is, I love to hear how parents get their workouts in and what they prioritize. It's just, I think, inspiring to everyone listening, because you think you don't have time, but you have to be a team to support each other to make time. Wow. Well, Robin, thank you so much for writing this amazing book. Thank you for continuing to motivate people. If you were to leave our audience with a piece of advice, what do you think is the most impactful for becoming a strong mama?
Oh, that's a good one. I will say when faith is tested, our endurance grows, and entering motherhood, whether you run a marathon or an ultramarathon or not, you are an endurance athlete. Like motherhood is an endurance sport, and we deserve, just like endurance athletes, to prioritize our self-care and our mental health. And the mind does believe what you tell it. So I say we feed it growth, and we feed it intentionality, and we feed it belief, because we've made it through so much to get here, and we're modeling these concepts for little ones. So keep going.
Keep going. I love it, Robin. Thank you so much. Where can people follow along? Where can they find your book, Strong Mama? And how can they find you on Peloton?
Yeah, so Strong Mama is available everywhere books are sold. I am Robin, Robin NYC on social media, robinarzon.com. And of course, I'm head instructor and VP of fitness programming at Peloton. So yeah.
I love it. Robin, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your day. Go back and enjoy your family at home and at Peloton. And I will be sharing Strong Mama all over social.
Amazing. Great speaking with you today. Thanks so much for having me on.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at bewellbykelly.com and follow me on Instagram at bewellbykelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.